So I'm going to be talking today about methodically improving performance of Angular apps. That's kind of close to the abstract and title that I said I was going to talk about. So I basically just want to talk about how I approach performance profiling, since it's a lot of what I've been doing the past several years. So as Kim so nicely said, I used to be on the Angular team, and as of a couple years ago, Victor Safkin and I left the Angular team at Google and started Narwhal so we could help teams outside of Google be successful with Angular. And it's been a fun ride. We've got a lot of people working with us now. We work on lots of interesting projects, lots of interesting challenges. And so we've got a booth over there if you want to talk to us about how we work and what we do for folks. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about a methodology that I use for performance profiling and improving performance to accomplish real objectives or real business value instead of just trying to make things faster blindly. I'm going to do a little bit of a sample of tooling, not spend a whole lot of time, but just like a brief overview, and then a couple of tactics, but going to point you to some resources at the end that are a lot more thorough about how to really turn every performance knob and get the most performance out of your applications. So after we left Google, we started Narwhal. I work with a lot of big companies, helping them figure out performance issues. We work on other things too, but my most favorite thing to do is to help people figure out what's causing things to be slow or to not render correctly, or like how can we really get those those first paints as fast as possible, get the app interactive as fast as possible. Angular itself has actually done a lot to be performant by default. But there's a lot outside of Angular that affects performance. And most of what I see with performance actually has nothing to do with Angular. It just happens to be an Angular app, and Angular happens to provide some ways to solve these issues. And so when I go into clients a lot, the first thing I hear is it needs to be faster, and it's pretty vaguely defined. What does that mean? But people say, okay, we've dropped conversion or something, or people are abandoning the site when they get there. We assume it's because it's slow, or people have responded to our surveys saying that the site's too slow, I don't want to use it, that kind of thing. And so they come to me, they say this, and they say, let's make everything faster. Let's just turn up the performance on everything. Let's max out everything. And the problem with that is that performance, just like all other engineering disciplines, is about figuring out the trade-offs that make sense to you. There's not a one-size-fits-all performance strategy. Usually, an app has different performance priorities, and even within an app, different routes have different performance priorities. Like your homepage may make sense to load to have content on the screen as fast as possible, and maybe delay the interaction at the cost of having content on the screen. Or your app may be a long-lived app that it just being fast as it's working is a lot more important than having text on the screen. It may not have much value just to see text on the screen. So I wanted to come up with a way of rationally looking at performance and looking at let's destructure this problem, and let's break it into the simplest pieces so that we can attack it more methodically. And so being the good thought leader I am, that was a joke, by the way. I'm a thought follower, but I decided to invent a new approach to addressing application performance called WAOH. And of course, everyone's heard of it so far. It's all over the internet. Here's a little bit.
WAOH.
WAOH. WAOH.
Wow. No. Wow. Close.
WAOH. 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 WAOH.
My cutest boy. So, WAOH, we've all heard of it, but just for fun, I'll go over it again. I'm sure everyone is using it every day, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's hearing this the first time right now. But what it stands for is understand, audit, analyze, and optimize. And the goal is to have an explicit process for tackling performance. And the process I use is I have a doc that I use, and I have a template that I go through. And it's nothing fancy, it's just some headings and Having a doc forces me to write things down as we're going through performance analysis and improvement. And I'll actually share a link to this example doc that I created, and this is based on, it has metrics from a real profiling session that I did with one of our clients. So the first step is to understand. Before we jump in, engineers, we get excited. We're like, okay, we heard this optimization. This is going to make things better. We should think about what we're trying to accomplish before we do that. And so it's important to slow down, take a step back, say, okay, I think this could work, but let's concretely define exactly what business value I'm going to derive from this activity. Because we don't want to solve problems before we understand or have concretely defined those problems. We're good engineers, right? So in my doc, I start by writing, okay, somebody's come to me with a problem. Let's define what we think the problem is, or how we understand the problem, and let's define it in business terms. Like, if people are abandoning the site, let's talk about that and talk about why we think that is and what we think we should be working on to improve that. So, I mean, the structure of this is pretty loose. In this case, the client, they needed SEO for a few key pages, and they needed landing pages to have content really quickly, and they needed other pages to be interactive within a reasonable amount of time, and mobile was important for them. And so we talked about what pages were more important, and what pages were more important, the types of users, and that kind of thing. So when writing this section, here's some sample questions that I like to go through. Like, why is the current performance bad? For example, do stalled renders correlate with abandonment? Can we look at our analytics or any other kind of data to see that this is true, or is it just an assumption? Is delaying interactivity frustrating users and preventing them from progressing further through whatever business funnels we have? Is this application or this particular part of the application short-lived or long-lived? Is it something they leave open for a day, so Bootstrap performance, loading performance isn't as important as all the interactivity in the app? Or is it something like a news page that you're clickbaiting and getting as many people to click to as possible, and it needs to have content right away, or you have ads on the page or something like that? And then what are the most important routes, and how do the performance characteristics differ for those routes? And so for this particular application, we identified the homepage as being important for both users and search engine optimization, and the first contentful paint is the most important metric we care about. And then we have a pre-qualify page. Like we just made up a fake bank page for this. So we say that we want people to sign up for loans or apply for loans. And so we want them to go to the pre-qualify page. And this isn't really important for search engines. It's mostly forms and stuff. So it's important that it's interactive quickly. And that's a little more important than them seeing content on the screen. And then we have landing pages that have all the different content that bring users into our site and show up in search engines. So these are important for SEO. So it's important that they have content on the screen really fast. That's the key thing with those pages. And there's not much interactivity to those pages. So if there's something on the screen they can see and it waits a couple seconds before the page is fully interactive and any widgets or things work, that's okay. So the next step in the process, after we understand what we're trying to do and have some assumptions defined of what we think will deliver the most impact, is we want to audit. We want to come up with some baseline measurements of where are we at with these things. Now, we've identified what metrics are important for what routes. Let's start measuring. And to do that, I usually use Lighthouse. Has anyone here used Lighthouse before? Cool. Is anyone here the first time you're hearing about Lighthouse? I'm just curious. Cool. Yeah, Lighthouse is a tool that the Chrome team put out, I guess, probably 3 years ago now, or they first introduced it, and they've gradually been iterating on it and making it better. And actually now it is included in your Chrome browser. So you already have Lighthouse installed in your developer tools. And we'll see that in a moment, how we can take advantage of that. So here I've got Angular.io loaded, and they've done a lot to really max out the performance of this, make it a real progressive web app. I think it works offline. It was a little quirky before, but they've got nice service worker implementation and have done a lot. So let's look at how we would do an audit on Angular.io. So we open the page, and then we open our DevTools, and we click the Audits tab in DevTools. And this is just a way to run Lighthouse. And we have right now, we're just going to measure performance, and we're going to simulate a fast 3G connection with a 4x CPU slowdown. and it runs the audit, and it gives me some metrics. So it tells me the first contentful paint was 2.7 seconds, and 3.4 seconds for it to be interactive. It gives me some other cool information too, like screenshots of the loading progression of the page so I can see what it looked like. So it's a good tool to give you some information and some ideas for how to optimize your page. For our case, we're only going to use it for audits, and we want to run this as we're making optimizations to our app to verify and validate that the things we think will improve the performance actually are improving the metrics we care about. So a note about audits. We've done our baseline audit now, and we've got some numbers, and we're going to be doing more audits. And because we're going to be doing more audits to compare against history, it's important that we're consistent. So this is one of the key things of doing any kind of benchmarking is you want to have consistency. And one of the things you want to be consistent is the environment in which you're running the benchmarks. You want to run on the same computer. It's a good idea to close all programs, all applications that aren't essential to running that audit, because if you have another tab open or another application, it's going to be using system resources that may affect the audit, and you'll get inconsistent results between runs. Actually, Google has really cool infrastructure that's specifically for performance where they have machines fine-tuned just to run performance and turn a lot of things off. And the Angular team takes advantage of that in their CI pipeline where they run benchmarks on every test. And they're very consistent because they run in a really stable environment that's specifically performance. But you can on your own computer, just shut down everything when you run an audit. Don't click around, just run the audit and step away from the computer, and you'll have a pretty good consistent audit yourself. There's some things like network that's a little bit less predictable, but in general, you can have pretty good audits. And then you want your setup, your production setup to be, or how you're auditing, you want to be as close to production as possible. When I do audits, I usually actually deploy to production and audit the production, or not production, but to like an environment similar to production on a remote server or a CDN if I'm going to be deploying that way, and measure from there rather than measuring locally, because then you're testing the characteristics like the protocol, the compression you're using, the caching headers. You're testing more like you would really do, because these might be things that we want to test optimizing as part of the WAOH process. So our baseline audit we ran with Lighthouse on our banking application. We saw the first contentful paint with the simulated 3G connection at 4 times CPU slowdown. It was pretty bad. It's 30,610 seconds, and the time to interactive was 8 seconds more at 38,420. Pre-qualify page was similar, a little bit faster, and landing page was pretty close. So we've got our audits, we've got a place to start, we can move on, we can actually start to do more interesting things and see what we can do to improve some of these numbers. So an important mental habit when getting into the next part where we're actually getting our hands dirty is we want to separate the process of auditing performance from the process of analyzing performance. Sometimes you'll use the same tools for both, like you may use the profiler to get benchmarks, but by using Lighthouse just for audits and doing the same thing every time, it's just kind of a nice habit that forces, you're less likely to make mistakes in how you're auditing if you just do auditing the same way every time and do analysis as a separate task with a separate process. So we understand what we're trying to do. We have audited, so we have some baseline metrics we want to compare against. So now let's start analyzing what's impacting our performance, and let's start optimizing it. So the process for this part is going to be, we want to analyze what we think, like we're going to look at what's happening, we're going to profile things, we're going to optimize based on the assumptions we formed from that, and then we're going to audit again and see how our metrics have changed. And then we'll repeat this process until we're happy, until business has stamped it and said, you're promoted, you fixed everything, you hired Narwhal, you did the right thing, etc. So let's look at the home page. This is the most important page we decided for our site, and we decided the most important thing is we want content in front of the users as fast as possible. That's more important than the home page being interactive. Even when there's content, they can still navigate to other pages, so we want to just have content in front of the users as fast as possible, and the main strategy to do that is pre-rendering, and Angular has come a long way with making pre-rendering pretty easy. I say that with a lot of caveats because a lot of different use cases require some thought in how pre-rendering works. You can hire Narwhal to help you figure that out. But pre-rendering is something that you would use to get content rendered to the screen as fast as possible. I've got lots of talks on pre-rendering, so do folks on the Angular team. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that, but just trust me that it's a good way to go. So let's look at Narwhal.io. We'll take a step away from our banking app. Narwhal.io, we pre-render all the pages on the site so that we can be sure that search engines will parse it and crawl it correctly, because search engines are still a little bit quirky in how they crawl and index JavaScript pages. So we pre-render pages for that, as well as just making it fast so when users go to our homepage, it's not super interactive, it's mostly content-based, so no reason why we shouldn't prioritize getting content in front of them as fast as possible. So what we want to do is we want to analyze the loading of this page and use the performance tab in Chrome. And we're going to configure it a little bit. You see me struggling. I didn't edit this video, so you can see even I forget how to open menus in the Devtools, even though I use it all the time. So we're going to reload the page with the performance profile open. We're emulating the fast 3G network with a 4x CPU slowdown, same configuration that we were using for our Lighthouse Audit. And it's running the profile, it's refreshing the page in the background, and then we're going to see how it looks. And this view is going to show us both the network, the performance tab. If you haven't used it in a while, it's come a long way. It's really nicely integrated. It integrates network, it'll show you screenshots and your JavaScript profile all in the same place, as well as memory. Everything you want is all in the same place where you can kind of see things in context. But when I look here, I see that I look at the screenshots and I see I'm not seeing content up front like I expected. I'm just seeing a blank screen, and then I kind of see some navigation, and then at about 13,000 seconds I actually see content. And this is just me running locally without much optimization with all these emulated settings to make it slower. So that's not good. That's just an example of Narwhal.io. And so we see right around here, we see it's not working. So our hypothesis is that pre-rendering is not working, because pre-rendering should have the page already rendered before anything else is loading or happening. It should be the first thing that's happening. So our hypothesis is it's not working. So we go to our document and then we write, okay, based on the profile, it seems like, looking at the screenshots, it seems like this is the problem. We write it down, we say, here's what we're going to do, and then we've written it here. We've said, okay, here's what the optimization is. In this case, there were actually some other technical things at play that were preventing pre-rendering from working. And then we implement the hypothesis. We say, okay, let's fix it. We think this is the most impactful thing to work on first, so let's fix this. And then we'll analyze it again. So we go back to our profile, we record it, and we see that this is actually a quirk of the performance. It's showing the screen right away there. That's actually a remnant from the previous loaded page, because the performance tool sometimes leaves, it still will stay on the previous page before it's refreshed and started fetching again. So we actually want to look around like the 1,500 second mark, and where we see it around 3,000 is where it's actually rendered. I'm not sure what the root cause of that is, but it's a pretty common problem with the performance profiler. So we see that it's much better than it was before. It was about 14 seconds before, now it's at 3 seconds. Still some room for improvement, but we're going to audit this and record it. So we're going to run our Lighthouse audit again, see how our first contentful paint time changed, and then we're going to update our metrics. So we said it before was 30,610, now it's 5,250, much better. Still a lot of room for improvement. The interactive actually got a little bit slower. That's to be expected, because now our document we're shipping to the browser actually has a lot more bytes, because it has all the CSS, HTML, everything it needs to pre-render included in there. So it's expected to actually push back the interactive time a little bit. And that's one of the trade-offs that I was talking about, that actually the more you prefer first contentful paint, you actually can pay a cost in how long it takes your app to become interactive, because you're doing a little bit more work to make things render faster. So that's expected to be around the same or a little bit slower. So next, I looked at my profile and I saw my bundle. My main bundle is kind of big, and I could say, it's like 3 megs. I have no idea why. Fortunately, there's this awesome tool, and there are other tools like it. This is still my favorite for this purpose, called Source Map Explorer. Has anyone used Source Map Explorer before? I know people I've worked with have used it before. because I love it. But basically, you can take a minified production bundle. If you generate source maps with it, which is pretty easy to do with Angular CLI, you can use Source Map Explorer to have a visual display of the size of different parts of your bundle, like what the input modules are coming out to in your final bundle and how much space they're taking up. I did this for our own website, and I actually see something that I should fix later today, which is this highlight.js library is taking up quite a bit of space in our bundle, and we don't really need it for the home page. I forget which page we need it for, but we could actually defer that to be loaded later. And so, so if we zoom in that, we see that it takes up 856 kilobytes. This isn't a totally minified bundle, but still, we see it's a big part of our bundle, and it's not really necessary for that home page to be interactive. In our banking application, we weren't, the first conceptful paint didn't change because it doesn't depend on that bundle loading to render, so that's expected. But the time to interactive was improved. We shaved off 5 seconds on a slow phone on a slow network, so that was pretty good. We trimmed moment.js as a typical culprit that leaks into bundles because it ships all locales, and there's some ways to get around that, but RxJS is another one. You may accidentally ship all the operators. Source Map Explorer is a great tool for finding things that are included in your bundles that you maybe didn't expect or want in your bundle. So some additional optimizations we did to that site where we saw that web fonts were blocking the rendering of the text on our page because we were waiting on web fonts to load. There's an easy fix for that. You can use font display swap, which will render a font on your machine first, and then when the web font is loaded, it will swap it with the web font. So you want to try to find fonts that are close so that it's not too noticeable to users. But I think that transition is a little bit less janky than blank white screen to then fonts coming in when the web fonts are loaded. So we did that. We deferred the loading of some non-critical image and video assets. We lazy loaded things that weren't critical to being loaded quickly for SEO or for users. We enabled Brightly compression. This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of, but with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS assets, I typically see Brightly compression something like maybe 20% better than gzip. It's got really interesting algorithms to accomplish that that we won't get into now, but look into Brightly. I think all major browsers support it now. Probably IE11 doesn't, but you can always fall back to something else. And most servers now have some way to support Brightly compression. And then we also moved pre-rendering to build time instead of request time so that you weren't doing this computation as part of the request lifecycle and shaved off a couple hundred milliseconds that way. So after, with this client, we spent a day of iterating. We got the first contentful paint down to 1,920 with the fast 3G and the settings that we started with, and down from 30,610 milliseconds just through a handful of optimizations. Interactive, we improved a little bit, but we focused a lot more on content for this client, and we identified a lot more optimizations to improve that number that we did later, and improved that number quite a bit as well. So to reiterate, we want to understand what the problem is and why we think, or how we think we can go about fixing it. We want to audit and get some baseline metrics of where we're at and where we want to go. Analyze and understand what's impacting the performance we care about. And then we want to optimize and iterate and keep auditing and repeat that cycle. So Lighthouse is great as a development tool. You can also run it in CI. Several of our clients run Lighthouse in CI, where you can keep measuring it. And there's also a tool that Paul Irish and some folks at Google and outside of Google worked on called PW Metrics, which is a wrapper for Lighthouse, specifically for CI, where you can run audits in CI and actually fail your builds if you're passing certain thresholds that you've defined. So that's a fun project. I'll tweet out these slides, but you can go to that example doc that I made for WAOH at go.nrwl.io/UAAO. And these other things are links too. I didn't talk a lot about tactics today, but Minko Gachev, who's now on the Angular team, has a great performance checklist of, if you just want to see, here are all the things I could do to make things faster. There's a lot of good ideas in there. And so I've got a link to here. You could also Google that. And then webdev.fast is the Google's official performance recommendation doc. that you can check out. So thank you. I finished right on time, but thank you for listening.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited that he talked about WAOH. Like, I've been hearing so much about it, like just everywhere on the internet.
I've been hearing a lot about it too, but mostly because it's like an island in Hawaii, right? Oahu.
Yeah,
I was thinking like
that's
I don't get
what I was
vacation.
thinking at first, but then I was clearly wrong.
Yeah, I was emailing somebody how to pronounce it because I wanted to do the video recording, and I was looking up the pronunciation of Oahu to figure out how to type out the pronunciation of Ua'o. So because I was like, yeah, it is kind of similar. So maybe I could just copy paste this and move it around, and it's the same thing. Do you think they have a trademark on different pronunciations?
Nah.
They actually do. There are cities that have copyrighted their names, so you can't use it anywhere.
That kind of actually makes
Hopefully
a lot
they
of
don't watch this video.
sense. Yeah.
You'll be
They might, though.
fine.
Might
He makes a
probably
lot of
blow
money.
it up.
Sue him. No, you'll be fine. Actually, since you work at Narwhal, you're a platinum sponsor of this conference. So first off, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Like big round for
Thank you,
platinum
Narwhal.
sponsor. You know,
Glad to be part of it.
without you, my ticket probably would have been very expensive. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. You know, giving a little bit of your money so that I don't have to spend my money like I did. But your mascot's a whale, a narwhal.
Yeah.
Obviously. Do you know any whale jokes?
Oh, you know I should. I bet Victor knows a bunch.
Does anybody know any whale
Well,
jokes?
when he comes on, we'll expect him.
Yeah, be ready, Victor.
Wow, way to set him up.
We always have a whale of a good time, I guess.
Not bad.
That's
not
pretty
bad.
good. That's good.
Wait.
We have a lot of plays on words. Maybe not jokes that. Like we do a lot of Tusk words and like people of the Tusk, I think is one of the things I call us. And Narwhalians or
Are you not Narwhalians?
That's what I call us, but I think Victor calls it, like we aren't consistent on how we refer to the team. We don't agree on anything. It's really an unhealthy company.
Wait,
I mean, you have a cool mascot. I've seen people walking around with like little squeeze toys.
Yeah, they
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was a first. We were surprised how big those things were, but yeah,
They're
it was
great.
pretty fun.
I mean, you could have gone even bigger.
Maybe. Yeah, we're going to look
Next
into it. Yeah.
so I really appreciated your talk on performance because that's something that is near and dear to both of our hearts.
Oh yeah, Netflix has a lot of great, you execute really well on performance and a lot of great performance minds. I've learned a lot from folks at Netflix, actually.
Oh, thanks. We come out to the community and learn from what other people are doing and try to bring it back and apply it to the things we do. But when it comes to performance, give me like, what's the easiest thing a developer can do to start improving performance today?
Lazy loading is a thing that is really easy with Angular, and I see a lot of people not really taking advantage of it. So like, splitting out your routes. Like if the homepage if people are entering from your homepage, and that's like 90% of your traffic is coming in that way, then lazy load everything other than the homepage. Like, don't lazy load the homepage, because actually lazy loading would then negatively impact your performance if you're lazily loading something you want right away. But all the sub pages that people are navigating to, lazily load those later. You can preload them after the app is bootstrapped so that it's still an instant navigation, like it's preloading in the background and navigating to. But Angular CLI makes that really easy to enable, so no reason not to take advantage of it.
And your first point in Oahu is understand, which I think is totally underrated. I think too many developers go in and say, this code looks slow. Let me try to optimize that. But they don't understand what they're optimizing for.
Yeah, I almost thought it was like too much attention given to that. Like, does it deserve its own letter in the UAO? But
No, I think it absolutely does. I think we often go to those like, oh, low-hanging fruit, I'll just take care of all these things, instead of really understanding what the actual issue is. Like, where is it breaking down? Where is it slowing down?
Which gets you in a nasty cycle of like, okay, it's broken again. I thought you fixed it. It's like, I kind of did, or it looked faster.
Thought it was better?
Yeah.
I noticed you're based in Arizona, is that correct?
Yeah, just moved back to Arizona from the Bay Area.
Is your entire team distributed?
We've got a lot of folks in Toronto. Victor just likes people to be near him.
Yeah, Canada, woohoo!
But everyone in the U.S. is distributed. So yeah, we're in Colorado, New York, a couple other places soon, in Phoenix. So
That's really cool. I did see you were hiring in New York.
yeah, we've got an office there that we're looking to hire some more folks. Yeah, we work with a lot of financial services and banking and stuff like that. So they have a lot of them are based in New York and have offices other places that we work with. So yeah, trying to have more of a presence in New York, so it's a little bit more convenient.
That's really cool. All right, and one last question, and then we'll give Victor a spot. I'm sure he's going to talk something about Canadians. Or
Yeah.
Ryan and Victor are going to talk about
Poutine or
poutine, hockey.
Yeah, I don't think he likes poutine.
Oh.
Ooh,
He's vegetarian. It's hard to have good vegetarian poutine.
Well, cheese and it depends.
That's true. I did see you have three books available on your website. Which
four
one should I
now
start with?
actually,
Four.
right?
Yeah.
4? I guess including the one you wrote before now. Yeah,
So is that the best one?
So Nitin on our team, who's here at the conference, just wrote a book based on learnings we've got. So we have this thing called NX it's an extension for Angular CLI that makes it a lot easier to build big applications. Like for many developers, many teams, many applications to live in the same repository. Just lots of tooling in addition to what Angular CLI gives you out of the box to make that more manageable. And Nitin wrote a book on best practices with NX, like how to organize your libraries, how to split things out. Just lots of things we've learned that work with all the clients we have using NX. So, and now I think if you go to our website, I think if you just sign up for our newsletter, you can get it for free now, or you could buy it if you don't want us to have your email address. But yeah, he just published it. It's an awesome book. But we have an essential Angular book, which is mostly Victor wrote, but it's about like if you've been working with Angular, it's like a deep dive into the fundamentals of like how does Angular really work under the covers. So if you're an Angular developer and really want to level up your understanding, that's a great book. And sometimes we give them away for free. If you come bug us, we can give you a discount code to get them for free.
Right. Well, they can come find you at the Narwhal booth,
Yeah,
I'm assuming. So probably go visit
You
there.
give us something in return, we'll get you a discount
All
code.
right. That's good.
But yeah, and then Victor's got the router book he produced, and then an upgrade book that is pretty good, but I think not complete. But it's a little outdated. Actually, the upgrade strategies we use now are probably not represented in there. We've been using Angular Elements more for upgrade, which is another interesting talk in itself.
Right, next year.
Yeah.
Next year.
We'll be here.
Well,
Thanks
thank
again,
you
Jeff.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great talking
That was a
with
great
you.
talk.
Thank you.
Love performance.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.